This is Family, and we have, hope I don't mess up your name, Kellan Fluckiger. Is that how you say your name?
Close. Kellan Fluckiger. Fluckiger. It's kind of weird.
Fluckiger. Fluckiger. Okay, wait, I was just trying to go by what I could pronounce from it.
Fluke. It's fluke instead of fluck. Fluckiger, yeah.
Oh, Fluckiger. Okay, well that
Yeah.
we got that. We got your website up so everybody can check that out. We are a featured on Newsly, so you can listen to this on Newsly within an hour after the podcast. If you use coupon code GHOST, you can get 1 month free premium subscription, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. So with that, how are you doing tonight?
I'm just fantastic. I've had a wonderful day, and I just got off of a lunch club meeting with a very interesting fellow from Chicago who's a engineer making telemedical digital devices. So all kinds of people you meet.
Yeah, it's very cool to talk to interesting people. I'm always finding new avenues on the podcast world. I've been podcasting since 2016, so I've been around for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you are a coach, a life coach, speaker, award winner, and it says one of the write-ups says you're an alchemist for exponential personal growth, and that sounds really cool. For a lot of us who are out here as creators, it's always good to listen to different points of view and find out if there are people who can actually make you more successful at what you want to do in life. So exponential personal growth sounds like a good thing. So how did you get into that space? Were you always interested in
No.
like a growth type of?
No, I got into it to save my life. I spent 30 years in corporate work from 1977 to 2007 and climbed the corporate ladder in the United States and Canada and had all kinds of success. But I had a terrible struggle behind the scenes. Like a lot of creatives, I struggled with depression. I didn't believe that I was worth anything, and I found refuge just in making money, but I didn't know how to be a very productive person. And so that ended up leaving me bad at relationships. I was married and divorced 3 times. I had struggles with addiction and all that stuff during 30 years, while I held up this image of being wildly successful. And then so in 2007, after 30 years of that, I had a big life change, and everything I've learned about developing super success and alchemist and all those cool words you said have been in regard to my own growth and transformation, not something I read in a book or did that. I did it all sort of the hard and grumpy way.
Well, sometimes I think like life is the best experience, as people, creative types is like your life experience ends up creating your work. Like even at the dark moments, I think that's what creative people are able to do. As musicians and producers, we take the bad things that happen and we find a way to make it resonate through art. And the best of us are able to relay that, and it becomes universal because we're kind of picking up a muse, and you can do that. But I think when you are a life coach or you're a speaker, you're tapping into the same energy. You're tapping into these kind of universal truths that maybe you didn't pay attention to. There are things happening in your life and you didn't realize, and then suddenly it's like the muse with a poet. Suddenly you hear like what Blake heard, and you write something like "Tiger, Tiger, fearful thy symmetry." I think sometimes you get that aha moment, and then you're like, "Oh, now I can self-actualize." But
Totally, exactly. And in the process, in the last 15 years since I left that whole industry and started over, I've written, 18 books, and to a couple of them, I've actually composed a couple of albums, 11 songs to tell the stories from those books. And one of them is the book was Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life, which chronicles all the ugly stuff. And of course, the name of the album that I wrote is called Name of the Black. And it has 11 songs on there that tell the stories that you're talking about. And then the sequel, I hadn't really intended on writing any more about myself, but I realized when that one was done, I needed to tell more of what was going on now. And so I wrote a second volume called Down from the Gallows. And I wrote an album of music, another 11 songs telling stories of recovery and growth called Promise and Power. So both of those have been recent, up in the last 5 or 6 years that I put those albums of music up. I have a lot of that kind of stuff.
Can people find all that material at your website? Is that your central location to get to all your content?
You know what I did? I just put my Spotify playlist link in the chat if you want to share it with anybody at any time.
Okay,
You
cool.
can get through if you put my name. See, when you have a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. So if you put that in on Spotify, you'll find me, or on
Very unique.
Amazon, you'll find the books, or on
Yeah.
Google, you'll find thousands of hits because of my old executive career and my current coaching career. So you can't hide when you got a weird name.
Okay, that's great because one of the cool things we do with the technology today with these podcasts, anything you send me that's a URL will become
Mm-hmm.
clickable on Spotify and Apple and all the places that we publish. So that's kind of cool. We're live now on our Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and it will be clickable there when the permanent links are there. So that's all good when I revise it. Because right now they have the main link, but so I was looking at you have like the ultimate life is what is that is that a guide that you allow people to get for free?
So on my website, I have 5 steps to create your ultimate life. And like most things, it's a
Mhm.
lead magnet. It is an overview of 5 steps that I took to start changing my life. The key to all that is, of
Okay.
course, you have to work at it, and it doesn't happen in a day. It's not download and double click like becoming an artist or anything else. So I worked for years after I left the industry I was in from 2007, 3 or 4 years of really hard work to sort of get myself centered, to stop living in the places of depression and negative self talk and start to do the things of self expression that you do as an artist. And I realized, and this is how the coach thing came in, I started realizing that I loved composing and I loved writing. And so I continue to do that. I'm working on a third album right now of songs. But I loved the thing I realized was the most fun was using the gifts that I have, and by extension that your listeners have, to serve, to help, to lift, to bless others. And so, like we talked for a minute ahead of time, the stories that we have, the experiences, they refine us. We go through the fire of those things and they make us more than we
Mhm.
were, more compassionate, more patient, more this. And so that process helped me realize what I really love to do besides work in the studio, which I still do a lot of, is serve and help. And so that's how the coaching business started and why I started writing books and everything else. And my phrase, the ultimate life, I give it a certain definition. Everybody's got their own, but my definition is a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy that you create by serving with your gifts. So that's the premise of what I help people understand and help them do. And my commitment for this year is a big number. My year starts in October, and there's a whole story behind that. But October 14th, last to next one, my commitment is to help 50 million people to discover and serve with their gifts. And to that end, I'm with you, and I've got a podcast and a television stuff and all kinds of stuff to help fill that goal.
Well, I think that's super interesting, just because I fell into this because somebody actually back in 2016 they found me on SoundCloud, and they were a podcaster, and they said, "Hey, I didn't even know what a podcast was." And they said, "Hey, you got this catalog on SoundCloud. I want to talk to you about it." I said, "What's a podcast?" Is like, "What's that, like a radio interview?" And it was a guy named Rock Tunes out of New York, and we started talking. And from that one talk, we did a podcast for like 5 months. And then
Oh,
I
cool.
decided that I'm going to go on my Instagram and take all these people I had in my Rolodex to all these other artists. And I'll start doing the same thing, just do interviews. And it just had blown up from there, and stuff. It was all just on like Anchor, or it was on Experiment, or all these different apps that were back in the day. And now I started doing the video back in 2020, but it was about being able to kind of take what you do, what you love. Like I'm not 100% an artist. I do like an IT job, but my
Mhm.
passion is music and podcasting and production. And through this new world of podcasting, I'm able to do what I love. And it's just I think it's really cool that social media allows people to have this other life, other part of their life to expand into.
I totally agree. And one of the things that when people come, people hire a coach for all kinds of different reasons. If you think about an athlete, they want to win a meet or go to the Olympics or do whatever. A life coach is like, I want to get better at being me. I want to learn to listen and live into my intuition. I want to have the courage to start that business or, be the artist I want to be. And you're right, because of the social media and the internet, you meet all the artists. They don't have to say, okay, I quit and I drop out and I go starve for 20 years while I figure out if I can do this. We can build a ramp. You've got things like Spotify, you've got things like Patreon, you've got all these places where you can
Mhm.
start and you can share and you can begin to do the things that you really feel called to do and then explore how to grow it. And eventually, if you want to, turn it into full-time service. I think of everything as service,
Yeah,
but
it's true.
full-time gift with your gifts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the way I've always tried to do is build a community of like-minded creators. And a lot of the people we've had on the podcast have all gone on to work with each other. It's kind of
Mhm.
become kind of like a commune of a group of people who've gone and created like a scene, not unlike like a CBGB scene or Whiskey a Go Go scene, where it's like a virtual scene where a bunch of the people I've interviewed since 2016 have gone on to create albums together. They've gone on tour together. They've gone and had conversations and been guested on each other's albums because I presented an artist to the scene and say, hey, they're cool. I'm going to go talk to them. And that's all I wanted people to do is find new people, find emerging and independent artists from, actors too. We've talked to actors and directors just so they realize there are people out there that are doing something maybe unique that you didn't hear about because it's not the top 20, right?
Uh,
But you get out there and you show people what people are doing creatively, kind of in the underground scene, and that's what I've been trying to do is elevate emerging and independent artists all over the world, and, and pay it forward. It's what I've been doing because I think you can. Like one of your things is you can make money doing what you love. I didn't initially make any money doing this. I did it for free. Years I did it for free, and then suddenly I started getting opportunities just because I'm just doing it, and I consistently did it. And then people said, "Hey, sponsors started showing up. Influencing things started happening." And it wasn't that I was
oh,
trying to do that. It just kind of came to me.
I love what you're saying. And no, you're doing exactly the thing. You are adding, I use the phrase add good to the world, but you're adding good to the world by connecting people that otherwise wouldn't be connected, doing something that you love, which is production and music and connection and your IT background and your ability to do all these things. And you're doing it in a way that serves a whole bunch of people, connections they otherwise wouldn't have. And then guess what? Opportunities come. People they find ways to appreciate you, and that's all money is. Money is our ability to express gratitude and appreciation for someone. I appreciate your music, I'm going to buy it. I appreciate your thing, I'm going to buy it. And that's how we support each other, and we turn money into a religion, and all it really ever was a tool for exchange and appreciation. So I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you're using your gifts and passions and adding good to the world. So good on you.
Well, I think it's like a barter thing too, because like what I've been doing is like ever since I've been a podcaster, like a podcaster will come on my show and then I go on their show, right? And then I go,
Sure.
and so it's like people just, I'll guest on somebody's album, and then I don't worry
Mhm.
about it. It's like okay, I'll get paid later. They guest on my album. I go and work on some production for somebody because they don't have Moog and I do, and they want a Moog sound. So you kind of just what I've found is like there's a whole thing where it's not about money, but I dig this artist in Japan, so I'm working with this artist in Japan, and we're working together, and we just talk, and we send each other files, and we just hey, we just dig each other, and I think like having a world where you don't have to always think about the dollar all the time. You just think about like, hey, I like this artist in Tokyo. I want to work with them. I think they're cool, and be able to have that conversation and the confidence to actually ask them. That is something that over time, I've gotten the confidence to say, hey, I can start that conversation and I don't feel scared about doing it.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about coaching because I don't think there's an artist or an author or a musician or a dancer or a singer that doesn't have that fear of failure, fear of ridicule, fear of judgment, fear of all that stuff. And learning to just be ourselves, to be yourself, to develop your skill, keyboard or whatever you have, develop your skill, yes, but then freely share and express it, and don't hold back who you're being because of this whole drama about judgment. And we live in a heavy, heavy sort of judgy universe where everybody gets
Yeah.
canceled every time they breathe. And that's a big holdback for artists and everything else. Because what if I write a book and nobody reads it, kind of feeling, right? And so
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So I totally get it. And that's one of the things that with every client, either a little or a lot as a coach, you work on. Like you're not doing some things you could do. Why not? Well, and anything that comes after, well, use a lie, right? Because it's an excuse. I mean, with that tonality, well,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
BS. So it's about mindset, it's about believing in yourself and all that good stuff. So, yes, absolutely.
Well, I think it's really great today, like, if you think about it, the gates in the industry, at least as I'm talking about music, right? With the whole industry, of the studios had these gates, and you couldn't even get through without going through A&R and artist development. And the fact that some kid could be on not part of the scene at all, doesn't have an agent, doesn't have anything, right? Creates this, gets them starts getting a million hits, hits like 10 million hits. Nobody even knew who he was. And the
Yep.
fact that you can now have the reels and the shorts and all these things that allow you to get through that gate, and people have the freedoms like, hey, I could just come up with something. There's a lot of stuff, but the fact that there's a way to do it and present yourself to the whole world, that I think is revolutionary in terms of allowing people to be able to be who they are.
I love that, and it's true. And you know what? Something you said is true. There is a lot, and there's a lot of people doing it, and there's a lot of stuff. And you know what? Every week, every month, every couple of months, there's still some new thing that all of a sudden goes viral, and there's a million this, that, and the other. So the idea that it's too late or you can't this, that, it's just not true. You
Yeah.
can today.
Because I grew up with a bunch of guys that were in bands, right? I'm 55, and we were 17. Some of the guys. There was one guy. He reminded me. It comes up. He's like, because he couldn't match Jimmy Page, he just gave up guitar, right? Because he's like, well, I'm never gonna be Jimmy Page. I said, well, who's gonna be Jimmy Page? You got to be you. And I was always really liked like the Clash, the fact that they
Okay.
were willing to come out and not be like Page, not be like Pink Floyd, not be like the Beatles, but have the kind of honesty of that punk aesthetic to be able to show up at CBGBs with a band like the Talking Heads or the Ramones. And I was very inspired by that, as a musician, because it's like, because we were all trying to be like Hendrix and trying to be like, like all the great players like Bernie Worrell from Funkadelic. Like, how many people are going to be Bernie Worrell? How many people are going to be Rick Wakeman? Like, the punk scene allowed people to say, wow, I could actually do it. If Joe Strummer can go out there and sing, I could go out there and sing.
I totally agree. And I have to say something completely off topic. Behind your left shoulder, there's an A on a screen behind you. Is that
Mm.
Arturia?
Oh, that's one of my scents. Yeah.
You know what? I love their stuff. I own their uh, modular 5 that has 30 something things in it. And I saw the A
Oh,
and thought, I know
yeah.
that letter. I,
Yeah. I
I
have
have all their software. Yeah, I love their stuff.
I have a Arturia Mini Brute 2S, and I have a Rack Brute 6U, and inside that Rack Brute is like a Moog Mother 32 and a Moog DFAM, and then I've got a grandmother, a bunch of Junos, and a bunch of other stuff. But yeah,
I
I'm a
totally love it. Well, I just saw the A and thought, that guy's an Arturia guy. I know it.
you see my stack of Rollins over right
I
next to
love
it.
it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Perfect. Well, anyway, it's a little off
Yeah,
topic, but I just saw your stuff.
yeah, I'm
Cool.
kind of like with a lot of kids today that don't know anything about hardware synths. Just to go off a little bit topic, and the fact that you knew about that synth, but there's a lot of kids that are in the box. I say they're in the DAW, right? And
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I've been a multi-track guy on Tascams and Fostex for years. I like to capture my Moogs onto a multi-tracks. And people say, well, why are you doing it the hard way? Well, because I've got this analog synth that has all this girth and it has all this sound, and I don't want to throw it into a PC. I want it to actually capture it on a track because it's giving me all this warmth, and I just feel like I'm kind of not giving the world everything it can give the world if I bring it into a digital machine.
I love it.
But
I used to have an Otari 2-inch, 24 track when I was running the studio. And,
yeah,
and I don't have any of that anymore. And I do use a DAW and everything's in the box. Although I do have 2 or 3 hardwares, but I used to have like 3 or
tons of
4 racks of them. Yeah, tons of them, like I'm sure you do. So cool.
yeah. I'm kind of old school that way, but that's just my aesthetic. But it seems to be coming back. There's a lot of the fact that Moog is selling stuff, and sequential circuits, and Oberheim just came back with one of their OBXA. So like the world is looking at bringing back some of this analog gear. It's like showing up all over the place, but that's a whole different thing. Um, I think one of the things that musicians always deal with is like talk about overcoming depression, and a lot of what we do is like the artistic process helps us work through it. But people who
Mhm.
don't have that there's probably don't have a way to get to use art to kind of get around their personal traumas. Like, how do you tell people as a coach to overcome depression? What are the techniques that you have people look at?
So the first thing for me is I didn't do anything about my struggles for decades. I suffered in silence and had all the traumas that I talked about. Finally, when I did something, there's probably 3 big keys. Key number 1 is to take responsibility for my life. And what I mean, I know that sounds woo-woo, but what I mean by that is all the stuff that happened to me as a kid happened, and nothing in the world can change that. So here I am. I could have been 30, I was 50, but I was your age, 52 almost. When I finally said, you know what, I'm done allowing these old things, whether they're a year old or 30 years old, control my life. I don't know exactly what I have to do. I don't know what the path is, but I'm not staying here. So I started talking to people. I went to talk to counselors. I started exploring what is there to do. So I explored meditation and talking to shrinks and antidepressants and just all kinds of stuff, not because I was looking for a magic thing, but
Hmm.
these are the levers of my life. So number 1, put your fist down or your foot or make a firm decision that you're done with the current state of being. If you're locked where you are, you don't have to stay there. I
Hmm.
guarantee no matter where you've been or what's happened. So make a firm decision. Number 2, one of the mistakes I made for decades was to stay isolated and not share. I believed truthfully that I was bad and everything was wrong and I never would be okay and all the stuff that we tell ourselves. And there was no reason for me to quit believing that until I started talking to people and talking to them a lot in terms of regular counseling. And sometimes I went to rehab meetings because I had drug problems too. And I started sharing openly and realizing, okay, this is a process. I'm not alone. And there are ways to move through this. So no matter what the struggle is, the big things that keep us there are isolation, believing that we're alone, believing that there's no way out and no way forward, and none of those are true. They're all manufactured things. And so whether you find counselors or books or religion or meditation, it is allowing the possibility that there is something better. Now, the next thing is you're going to have to stick with it because we live in a download and double click world where we think we're going to pop on Google, we're going to type in some crap, we're going to get it. Maybe it's free, maybe we pay a little, we download, we double click, and boom, everything's fixed. Like everything needs to be solved in the length of a TV sitcom.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know anybody, and I've coached a lot of people in my 15 years doing this. I don't know anybody where that happened to. It's a process. and you have to stick with it, just like training in the gym, or just like learn to play your axe, whatever you play, guitar,
Yeah.
keys, whatever. It's a process, and you got to stick with it. There's going to be plateaus and ups and downs, and you can quit anytime you want, but nobody writes stories about the quitters. So
Yeah.
take
I
the
think,
actions you need to, get the help you need to, and keep at it.
but I was looking at also a statement, which I think some people maybe don't really think about, is like you have to learn to forgive everyone and everything. And I guess I would also ask, do you have to learn to forgive yourself as part of that?
Almost more than anything, the last book I published about 6 months ago is titled Forgiveness, A Journey of
Mhm.
Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And for me, my biggest problem wasn't even forgiving the abuse and stuff I had as a kid. My biggest problem was forgiving myself because of the years of isolation, depression, addiction, failure, failed marriages. I felt like I had done all kinds of hurt to people, and that guilt plagued me. Part of what drove me to, substances and everything else. Learning to forgive myself was paramount. Now, I'm going to give you a piece about forgiveness. People misunderstand it. People think forgiveness, whether you're forgiving someone else or forgiving yourself, is pretending something didn't happen. No.
Mm.
People think forgiveness is excusing bad behavior, either others or your own. No, there
Mm.
may be permanent consequences. I had a dog who got hurt when he was a puppy, and I thought it was first dog I ever had. It was in 2007, right after everything changed for me. I got a puppy, and he got hurt on New Year's Eve. We were horsing around, and he bumped into a speaker stand, and the speaker fell off and landed on his toes, broke all of his toes. So we took him to a vet, middle of the night on New Year's Eve, like had to find an emergency 24-hour vet. They did everything they could. They'd operated. They did all this stuff. But they told us when they sent him home, he might have a limp later. Well, sure enough, he developed a limp, and he had it the rest of his life when it was cold or he ran around too much. Now, here's the thing. The dog had a permanent injury because of something that happened. It could have been on purpose. It wasn't, but it could have been. And so someone may have done something on purpose. You may be suffering a permanent injury, or someone that you hurt maybe. The dog didn't care. The dog wasn't going to allow that fact. He enjoyed his life fully and had a limp. So even if something about your life isn't perfect, and I call it my limp, if I have a limp, a leftover thing because of whatever happened, if you let that control you, all it does is make it so you can never live fully. So forgive everyone, everything, all the time. Empty your plate, empty your backpack, especially yourself. All you do when you forgive is you make an energetic choice to no longer allow events of the past, whether somebody else did them or you did, to have power in the present. And you don't pretend it
Yeah.
away. If you need to fix something,
Mhm.
make amends, do all that. I'm not saying pretend, but
Mhm.
even after that, lots of stuff we do you can't really fix. So
Yeah.
love and
The past
forgiveness
is
is the answer.
the past is the past. I mean, you get informed by the past. I mean, as musicians, we kind of take things that happen like right now, or take something that's like in your head as like a sound painting or a cinematic kind of vision. And a lot of it is trying to work through what you just talked about. They're trying to work through these things that happen, and you tend to make some of your best work from like the worst things that ever happened. But and then what I tried to learn is like I don't just have to write about the worst things. I can do things that are fun, right? Funky or dance type of songs from being happy. Because a lot of
Yep.
artists think like all I could do is just write, try to write like "Tangled Up in Blue," "Blood on the Tracks" type of stuff, right? That I'm gonna focus on that, and you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be "Blood on the Tracks." It could just
That's
be
why
like,
I wrote. Oh, that's why I wrote the two albums. One's called "The Name of the Black," and the songs in there are dark. There's a song called "The Dark Side of Black," and one's called "Go Ahead and Hate Me." And there's okay. And then the next album's called "Promise and Power," and one of those songs is called "Hallelujah Road." And there's so yes, you can tell the truth in your songs about what happened. You can also, as you work on yourself, tell the truth about how those things have shaped, softened, and softened and blessed you and given you more empathy, patience, love, and inspiration. That's where your real value to add to the world is. If you or I stay forever in lamenting or being angry about the misery, we're not going to add a lot of good to the world. If we tell those stories as we need to, and then take the reins and do the work, then the hurt that we've suffered can be the benefit upon which we build growth and value, and we can write about that too.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think a lot of times you gotta find a way to, like, create that powerful life, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to have an informed life where you have what I've always tried to do is have a holistic vision, right? So people will say, "Well, it's like it's this or that." It's like it's always like black or white. It's like, and what I find, it's like a little bit of everything. You get people who say, "Well, I'm only gonna do analog." And I was like, "Well, if there's something digital I need to use, I might use it." Right? I like, I talk about in the box, but I have stuff I have that box. But what I try to tell people is like, I'm gonna do what serves the song. So today a song can be done in the box. The next day it might be all acoustic guitar. It's kind of whatever the song needed because that's how I'm gonna birth that song because it needs this. So I'm gonna go grab an axe and I'm gonna use that, or I'm gonna grab a trumpet, or I'm gonna grab a sax because that's what it needs. And I'm not gonna be limited because if I want it to be outlaw country, I'll do that. If I want it to sound like Sun Ra, I'll go do that. It's kind of like it's whatever I feel like. So it's expansive. You try
Yep,
to expand. That's why I kind of labeled my music expansive sound because I didn't want to get narrowed down. I love like so many different genres. I didn't want to get pinned down, and I just
love
want to
it.
be able to go wherever I want to go.
Absolutely love it. Love it. Love what you're saying, and that's actually applicable to life because so many people think, it's true that every one of us has a set of glasses, and whether you wear glasses or not. And the lenses you wear are the sum of your past, your experiences. You build a view of the world, and so does everybody else. And I can promise you that your view is different than my view and somebody else's view. That's fine. All those views can be true. The problem is when someone decides my view is right and
Mhm.
yours is somehow wrong instead of just different. The strength comes from simply allowing two things to be true at the same time and seeing what we can create from there.
Yeah, I think that's what people build their own glass ceilings, like your own inner voice could actually create the most difficult ceiling because you're the one that's telling yourself you can't do it. No one else is telling you. You're the one that's actually saying you can't do it because you've built this thing and because you felt like, well, I've got to be I got to hit like 100 million fans or I'm done. When there's artists
You,
that will live at 50,000, 100,000, or 5,000, it's like, but they're just happy. Like, so if you're not happy, it's going to be everywhere. Like your unhappiness is going to be everywhere. If you got to find a way, how do you get happy? How do you get out of that? How do you stop that ceiling's keeping you at like 12 years old because something happened, and then you're
I
stuck.
love what you're saying. I love what you're saying.
How are you
That's
stuck?
the work of a coach. The work of a coach is to help people identify and eliminate those ceilings, those things that prevent us. We can't do this because it won't work because too late, too old, too young, missed my opportunity, too many obligations, no time. All those are stories, and they are, in fact, those ceilings that we create, right? And if you want something bad enough, we can figure out how to do it. And that's my whole life is helping people figure
We'll
out
get to
what the stories are they're telling themselves and whether or not they like the outcome of those stories or would they like to create something new.
Well, I think a lot of times people are doing things that are not productive. So I saw some statement here that I think the question is like, how do you eliminate anger from your life? Because I think anger doesn't really get you anywhere. It just it causes you to do a lot of destructive behaviors to yourself, maybe to other people. And when you could be trying to move forward, but you're stuck. So like what's your approach to trying to eliminate anger from your life?
So I look at how things work and I'll show you what I mean. every living organism is heliotropic. And that's a big fancy word that means attracted to light. So little single-celled things will migrate across a petri dish to get closer to a source of light. Plants grow crooked to get into more light. We've all seen that, right? In Phoenix, I had a house, and the cactus grew in an angle to get more sun, right? So we are heliotropic in the same way as that we are attracted to love. Love is the force that brings things together. It binds them. It holds stuff close. Fear, anger, rage, hate, that is a explosive force. It pushes stuff apart. All you have to do is look at different groups of people and the mechanics of human interaction to understand that love, creativity, compassion, all that binds together, and the opposite explodes stuff. So if you want to get rid of anger, you go to work on it just like you would depression. I'm not going to be angry anymore. Why? Because I said so. I don't know exactly how to do this, but I'm done with this. I'm done making excuses for it. I'm done blaming people, reading books, talking to counselors, going to church. I don't know. But the foundation is I'm done with this anger. I'm going to keep fooling around with different things, systems, books. I help a lot of people with emotions, so a coach maybe, or a shrink or whatever, but I'm done. And if you say, well, I don't know, I'm going to try. Well, that's like saying, I'm going to try to learn the guitar. I don't know if I can. Well, that kind of effort doesn't make you practice very much. It doesn't make you good on the keys or the synth or whatever. When you say, I'm learning this thing no matter what, okay, now you have the motivation. Well, if you apply that to your emotions, whether it's anger or frustration or blaming or victim mentality or anything, even if you don't know the way all the way to the end and it doesn't happen in download and double click, as long as you keep moving in the direction you want to go, you'll get there.
Yeah, I've always felt like everything takes effort. And, a lot of times the problem, like you said, the point and click kind of world, instant gratification world, of where everything is just a quick hit, right? Like people look at something for 15 seconds, and if they don't get the right response, they just pass it. So how many things are you missing? Because like, a child of the 70s, we were triggered by commercials, but we had like 5 channels. We didn't have like 1,000 channels with all these different inputs hitting us all at once. So I actually could sit down and read a book because I'm not going to get distracted by seeing the same thing on TV over and over again. It's boring. There's only 5 channels. So I'm actually going to sit down and read that book. I'm going to go outside. And I'm not going to have a cell phone pinging me every 5 seconds with some chat. So like, I think the distractions prevent people, or it gives them excuses to not focus. And we're very unfocused because there's so many inputs.
You're right. And I love the fact that you changed it from prevent people to give them an excuses, because you know what? The TV and the cell phone and the iPad and everything, they'll have an off switch. You may not know where it is, but if you look really hard and you go on YouTube and you search how to turn my phone off, you'll find it.
Yeah, I've been doing a thing every week where I encourage people to actually go and find an album from any genre. Turn off your cell phone, turn off all the iPad, and just listen to an album. Don't care what type of music, but don't just listen to one song. Go find an artist that you think is cool and listen to their whole record and kind of tune out other things, because I feel like records are like books, and you don't just read the cliff notes to a book. You read the whole book. And if you really want to enjoy music, you shouldn't just listen to 2 minutes of every artist. You should try to understand who that artist is, because artists actually give you like these sound paintings or these cinematic points of view. And I'm not pushing any particular artist. I'm just saying that if music needs fans that are more engaged, that are willing to listen to the person's complete thought rather than
I
just a
love that.
window dressing.
Yes. Complete thought. I love it. So yes, I couldn't agree more. We do. We've shortened our attention span. We've shortened our digestion cycle. And, people are willing and do cancel ideas and thoughts and other people in a heartbeat without even understanding what happened, the rest of the song or the rest of the poem or the rest of the book or whatever. Couldn't agree more.
Because I just don't think you can get a good view of the world by just getting so many snippets. You're getting like millions of snippets. So how much understanding is there? Because nobody's completing the vision. They're just getting a piece of it and making a judgment, snap judgment right off a tiny, tiny, small piece of what exists. And so I just think people have to make better choices about what they're going to be fed, and then try to not be fed and actually seek knowledge or seek art, and not let other people try to, control what you see. You start to take a stand and say, I know what I like, and I'm going to go find the things I like.
I agree. We live in the time of instant gratification, and that's one of the things that prevents people that I meet with, with that are looking for something. They want, like, I had a client who he wanted a CEO checklist that would make his company profitable. Well, if I do this, this, and this. Well, I've been in that chair. It depends on the business. It depends on your people. It depends on the life cycle and the market cycle and your market research. And more than anything, it depends on who you are being in the chair of leadership. Are you listening? Are you being connected to both the reality of your customers, the products, and your people? Are you connected to the effects that the drama in your own life is having? He was having some personal drama in his own life. If you don't if you do the soundbite thing and you react to this and get mad at this and carry this around and smash your fist about that and then go, get drunk this night and be happy for 5 minutes. I said, you're not putting together a coherent picture of the progress you want. You're certainly not understanding life, which is what you said, but you're telling me you want X amount of progress and you actually have no idea how to do it because you don't have a good picture of who you're being and how all these pieces fit together. So we had to take apart everything and understand how he was showing up for each of these different situations and get a coherent view of how he wanted to relate to life. And then we were able to create some progress in the business.
Well, it's kind of hard to get a holistic vision from like a cheat sheet.
You can't.
How are you gonna do that? It's like it's kind of like if you think about the Socratic method or you think about like enlightenment thinking, right? People used to really try to challenge. It's like the idea if you go to a school that's going to teach, like I went to Bowdoin College. It's known for creating holistic thought, where we
Mhm.
were blue book test. We wasn't, we didn't get just it wasn't just a checklist and you just like go in and you say this is X, Y, Z, and you gotta, it's not like the SAT. You actually, a professor was going to give you a blue book and ask you to explain to them if you understood what they were teaching you all semester, and be able to actually have an argument and actually represent it with fact, and not just like, you had to actually think. You had the
Yep.
critical thinking. And a lot of people today, they don't get that. They don't get the idea that you can't just be fed something and repeat it. You have to prove your point. You have to prove you can have a point of view, but can you prove it? Can you prove, what you're talking about is relevant? It actually has anything that means anything, or you just parroting what somebody else gave you. There's a lot of people that just think there's a quick hit, the cliff note, the cheat sheet, and they're not willing to actually go in and dig in and do the work. And my grandpa was a coal miner, and he
Uh-huh.
built his own house. And he was a farmer, and he took the skills from in the mine and built his own house, had a farm, very self reliant, and the stuff he didn't know how to do. Right. He learned how to fix his car. He learned how to do all the electricity. He just learned how to do stuff because he went and said, I had to because no one's going to help me. Like back in the time he was in, they weren't going to help a black coal miner. So he had to learn how to do it if he wanted to get it done.
Yeah, it seems like we're allergic to that, the process of growth. But if you look at nature, trees grow at the speed they grow. The seasons grow at the speed that I had an orange tree. When we lived in Phoenix for a while, I planted an orange tree in the backyard. Now, if you know anything about citrus, what you know is that they don't produce fruit the first year. If I
Oh,
had been impatient and gotten pissed off, I'd have ripped the tree out. That stupid tree, not worth anything, garbage. I bought a crappy tree, and then stomped down to the nursery to get a refund. Instead, because I was patient, and I waited and I watered it and weeded it and waited till the next year, and I can't remember if it was the second or third year, we had crop after crop of very nice oranges. But it took the time it took, and there was no amount of frustration or banging on Google or shortcutting or sound biting that was going to change the speed of the oranges. And
yeah,
anything in life, whether it's
just
good
like that.
music or good art or personal development or reaching heights of insight or enlightenment or anything, it's like the orange tree.
Yeah, you definitely the problem with the instant gratification today, the people I always talk about like also think about people trying to make things perfect, right? So the computer and the DAW has kind of created this thing where people don't like the happy accident, right? And I've always told people like whether you're a poet or an actor or any creative person, a lot of art is that the kind of just off the cuff happy accident that happens. And the judgment of an artist is you go with it, or do you like not allow that to happen, right? So because you oh that can't be proper, so you don't let it happen. But a lot of what really good art is the fact that the accident you go with the accident, that you go with the thing you didn't expect, and you actually let the universe kind of guide you and say, wow, this is where how I'm going to actually create something new.
So I want to give one more thing, if I'm giving any advice, which I don't think I am, but let's pretend for a minute. And going with your happy accident thought, what if the universe, the divine, the grand spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, the muse, what if the universe is trying to give us information and we're too busy thinking we know everything, being distracted, messing around, so that we don't hear it? And what I mean by that is learning to meditate, learning to listen to your thoughts, to be still, to be quiet, and access your intuition, and then trusting your intuition is an intentional version of that happy accident. So
Yeah.
I love what you said. There'll be an artist, and then when I did a lot of vocals, artists would listen to this or that, and they, oh, that isn't good. And I'd say, no, keep it, because there was a particular turn of thing that made the song good and the vocal track good or whatever. And you're right. The idea of perfection in the music is infected it all. And so pitch tiny variations or timing variations, other things are somehow sins. And no, they're not. They're humanness. And now even in the digital world, we've got humanized controls to make it sound not quite so perfect. But what I would give the listeners is trust your intuition and develop your ability to hear it so that you can trust it and you can rely on it instead of having it be one of those things that just sort of happens and you have no idea why or where or whatever. You can develop that skill like you can playing keys or the guitar.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do with a lot of people I work with is like just roll the tape and just kind of do stream of consciousness.
Mhm.
And the reason and I'll tell the person, the artist, like trust you've been singing for a long time, you've been working for a long time. Trust yourself, get on that mic and just go with it, right? And what I find is like after like you be put down sessions like an hour of somebody doing that, you'll find all these gems. And it's like a lot of times it's better than anything they actually went and wrote down. But what I try to tell them, like, that's in your head anyway, just because you didn't write it down, it was still there. You just now have the permission to just let it flow. And I just find that a lot of work comes out of that, and it from just kind of doing a stream of consciousness, free flowing kind of experimental type of work. But there was a lot of artists I wasn't really into. Frank Zappa who used to do that a lot, and if you
Yeah, he
check.
did.
And so I would try to tell people, it's like that method is not a bad way to come up with some of your best work. And you say, well, it's so unintentional. It's like it's very intentional because every artist, like you said, you're not listening to the muse. You're kind of like, I think every artist can listen to the muse, and some of them stop listening to the muse because they think that they know better. And it's really like, you're all you're doing is that you're a conduit for the whole universe. And if you take everything you've ever learned, everything you ever heard, and your artistic ability is to figure out how to make that work. And you can just let that happen without overthinking it. Not that you don't think, but overthinking might be a problem.
Totally. Love it.
And I try
Absolutely
to
agree
apply
with
that to like life, even to watch music. It's like, well, you can apply that same thing to the way you do things in life.
I totally do. So here's what I do. So I'm a coach, and I have a long ritual in the morning, a couple of hours, sometimes longer, and it's a lot of different things, meditation and reading, but the point of it is to get prepared so that I am an open conduit, and that every person that I talk to, whether it's you here on this podcast or the client that I just talked to earlier today, or the guy I met on Lunch Club just before this, I'm able to access the intuition as a conduit, and I can do something useful, because I have learned by sad experience that my genius isn't very bright. So I would prefer to be a conduit, a prepared conduit that does work the crap out of his skills, but a prepared conduit, so that those accidents happen more and more, and they become more and more reliable, and you can trust your intuition and your thinking and the flow and the stuff that you're talking about. So that's how I run my life.
So you think a morning routine is important? I think that like in order to have some discipline, I think any routine is good. But I think I've always been a morning person. People are like, "What do you mean?" I do like to prepare certain like things, rituals I go through in the morning. But do you feel that that helps people kind of focus their day when they do
Well,
that?
does an athlete warm up before or after the meet?
You before.
Okay, so if an athlete warms up before the meet and you want to have the very best day where you access all of your creativity and your power and your relationship expertise and whatever you're going to need, then warm up. The morning routine is your warm up. So why would you do that like after your meetings or after the day? I mean, warm up at night. Yeah, of course you need to do it in the morning. You're warming up for your day in whatever way makes sense for you. I have a bunch of things I do and help people learn, but it's not magic. It's a certain set of things. So yeah, you need to do it in the morning.
So do you think that like when you write a book, is it always a good idea when should you write a book? I guess the question is because people write books, but did they? I think you have to have something to say. That's kind of obvious, but um, some people who are doing certain things and then they never really put it down, and I think it's important to maybe start to actually take the action. It's like I have all this stuff I've been doing for my whole life, and I never really documented it. And maybe I need to transfer that knowledge to other people in the form of a book because that's how people will process it.
So I started writing books after I left that career, and after I wrote a bunch. I've written 18 now, but I didn't set out to do that. I realized that I had a good system. And the system is exactly for people who have a rich life experience and you want to organize the life experience and share some of it with somebody. So I finally wrote the book about that called The Story Arc, which is a book about how to write books for people
Mhm.
just like you that feel like they've had enough life experience that they really ought to share it. So the answer to your question is, if you feel like you should and that there's enough life experience that you could serve, then the question isn't, should I write a book? The question is, do I want to serve in the most effective way? Now, today, you can write a book, you can create a course, you can create a workshop, you can do all kinds of things. But I find that the discipline of writing a book helps with all of those things, because it helps get you organized about what's happened to you, about what things meant what, and you create sort of a framework of what you'd even share with someone, whether it's about music or life lessons or relationships or whatever you want to talk about. And so in this case, I wanted to share something about how to put together a good story about
Well,
your life.
I
You know
think
what I
that's
mean?
a good place to start, for my audience because a lot of creative people they're doing they're working on music or they're an actor or they're a painter and they haven't thought about doing something else like a book because they're in the middle of working on the art that they're in. But the whole process of how they got to where they are, or it could be useful to become a life coach, to actually take what you've done. And I've actually kind of been in this position now that I've been doing this podcasting for a while. And people have asked, hey, you could do that. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm that person, but now I'm starting to think more and more after talking to people like yourself that I could actually take a lot of things I've done and actually create a book and then create like a life coach type of program.
You could.
Uh,
If that's how you want to serve, then you should
yeah.
explore it. Absolutely. If your intuition is telling you to explore it, then listen up.
Mhm. And I think a lot of the people could, listen to what we're saying and they might find themselves in the same position
Mhm.
where they haven't gone and done that step. And I think it's always cool to actually get somebody to make you think, to make you think about what you need to do in your life to get beyond where you are. And I think this conversation's been it is enlightening to be able to talk to people like yourself. This is one of the reasons I podcast is because I'm able to bring people on this program and give their point of view to the rest of the world. And I think that's valuable for people to be able to get an extended, not just 5 minutes, but like an hour worth of talking to people and hearing
I
what they
love
have
it.
to say.
I really honor you for the effort you've made, the work you do. I'm glad you're getting recognized and getting some sponsors and being able to allow people, sponsors or whoever, to express their appreciation for your audience and for your work, because that's how things continue. So thank you. I appreciated the opportunity to be with you today and to share what we've shared.
But I want to let everybody know that we will be on a lot of platforms. If there's different platforms that you use to listen, YouTube is out there for everybody. This will be on YouTube. It's on YouTube right now, and it will be on Apple Podcast and Spotify and a lot of other capabilities. But we'll send you a landing page where everybody can just go to wherever they listen or watch podcasts. We'll have this landing page we can give to your fans. We'll get that to you tomorrow.
Great. I just sent another link that is just exactly that. It's a link of a bunch of things. It's called Captivate, I think, is a page that has all the places to find the podcasts that I have
Awesome.
on it if people are interested. I'm
Oh, cool.
delighted
That's
to
your
be here
landing
with you.
page. Okay. Yeah. So we'll create a super. Well, thank you. I would love to have people on. One of the things we've done with the Ghost since we've been around is like if you ever have a reason to want to come and talk again, we've had many people come back and have repeat conversations with if they feel like there was something more they wanted to bring to the audience. So we always extend that if there's ever something you want to push in terms of what you're doing in your life and you want to let you're excited about it, you want other people to know about it, we do that again. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the only thing I'm working on right now is my road to 50 million. So I do a live video every day. I've done it for now 70 days, 10 to 20 minutes to 7 platforms
Awesome.
like you. And it's about road to 50 million. My journey to help 50 million people discover and serve with their gifts. So that's the only thing I'm doing right now.
Well, I think that's a great goal to have. Everybody has to, have a vision for what they need to be. And I hope everybody will go to your website and click on it where it's going to be clickable and really experience. We're going to put all the links you sent to me on the final published ones, and we'll be fully published tomorrow. But thank you very much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for all the good you're doing.